It's not going to be like any, let's say, death-associated celebration that you've seen before. But then there's not that many people that have their own movies and songs written about them. So we're going to have fun with all of that, pay tribute to a great band. We're going to start out tonight. We have a short film that we want you to see. It started out as a movie and ended up a lot about him. But I have a fellow, Greg Peterson, who put this film together, and he'd like to set it up for you guys. Don't forget to sign the book before you guys leave so we know who you are. And enjoy. Have a great time.
First of all, my condolences to the Tom Dill's family. On behalf of the several folks who were part of a project. The project was the history of State Line Speedway. We had an opportunity to interview Tom on a couple of occasions, and we started off with just going to interview the 10 of the folks who were raced during the 1956 through 65 race season, and Tom's name kept coming up over and over and over and over again, as you'll see. And then we expanded it to not only 10, 20, 30, 40, well over 50 of those drivers during that time period. 3 of them are here today, and pay a salute to Tom, Jim Scott, Dave Turner, and Sammy LaMancuso. So to them, thank you for coming. There may be others who raced with Tom, and if so, please come up and let yourself be known, because you'll probably be interviewed and asked about Tom. So what you're going to see is a brief vignette of movies about Tom. Tom talking about himself, talking about racing, but more importantly, other people talking about Tom. And if you don't smile at the end of this, I really check your pulse.
From Erie, Pennsylvania, number 51, driver unanimously selected as the man we would least like to see in our rearview mirror, Tom Dill.
If you were leading a feature race and you're on that last lap, who was the guy you least likely wanted to have on your tail? The guy you knew was just going to be mean about it or aggressive?
Yeah, Tom Dill was. He'd run right over you. It's Tom.
It's unbelievable.
He spun me out quite a few times, and I never did get close enough. I would have worked him over if I'd have got close enough. But I never did get close enough to.
Tom Dill, him.
Tom Dill.
I say he's nuts.
Yeah, Tom Dill, he was a hot shot.
Guy tried to run that way was Tom Dill, I remember.
Oh, God, Tommy. Yeah.
Tom Dill, me and Tom Dill, we had a feud for I don't know how many years.
You connect with a guy like Tom Dill. What's the connection here?
We drove a car.
Yeah? Was he any good?
No.
One racer that you just didn't want to have at that last lap?
Well, I think one of my heroes is Tom Dill.
You win! You win! That's everybody says that.
Yeah.
Tommy Dill, there's a pretty good chance he would get a hit back.
I see. Tom Dill, he was a hot shot back in about those heydays also.
Tom was an aggressive driver.
Tom Dill.
That third or fourth turn.
I tell you what, you didn't want to be in front of Tom Dill.
You win! Is there anybody out there also that sort of was more aggressive than others? The guy who really would kind of bump you around no matter what?
Tom Dill took me out of a few races, I tell you.
On your tail, if you're on the final lap of the final race, the guy you wouldn't want to have there, and virtually everybody. Well, who would you think?
Tom Dill would be one because he'd give you a little push.
And you're on the final lap, and you're leading in a feature, and there was one guy you did not want to have behind you because he might just push you around, move you around, or just didn't want to have. Who would that be?
You know who that would be. Old Dill. Old Tom Dill. Good guy, but I'll tell you what. No doubt about it. I was just saying, a great guy otherwise, you know.
When the races are all over and the beer got cracked out, there he was.
Tom Dill.
With the guys I've raced with?
Yeah.
Tom Dill.
Tom Dill.
Scared the living daylights out of me.
The answer that everybody else, from Squirt Johns to Bobby Schnars to Marv Thorpe, when we asked the same question, every one of those guys, we asked the same question. They said the one single person they did not want to be on that last lap with one-on-one was Tom Dill. Why would they say that?
I don't have any idea. I feel good about that.
No, that's the respect that you had. For
everybody.
Everybody.
That's one answer.
You were the hardest guy to race with. You raced harder than anybody.
Well, we all knew when out there we thought we could win.
Everybody has a favorite Tom Dill story.
Well, one of my favorites, of course, now this is after 65.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
But
we can open it up here.
Tom and I were feuding quite bad. And one night in a 50-lap race, I knew that Tom was going to get me. So I thought the only way to solve this problem is to get him first. So I did, and I got him good. He ended up somewhere over by the flagpole, and he come back out on the racetrack, and he was going around the inside of the racetrack kind of slow. And I knew he was waiting for me. He was going to get me. So I thought, well, I just got to get him again. Well, after the race, Leonard come calling. And he got me, and he took me and Tom down towards the pond. And this was after the race, you know, and he wanted to know what the hell was all that about. And I told Leonard that, you know, Tom was, which I think the week before he'd spun me out, and I told him that, you know, I had bumped Tom there early in the race, and he'd spun out. And when I come around a few laps later, he was running around the inside slow, and I knew he was going to get me, so I thought I better get him first. And Tom says, no, he says he broke my car when he hit me the first time, and I was just trying to finish the race. But you know, Leonard really loved it. He really did. He gave us hell, and you know, let's not have any more of that. And
pat you on the back.
Yeah. But Tom, you couldn't do anything to him to intimidate him. I mean, he'd come right back and get you the next week and do it intensely and then laugh like hell about it.
Tommy wasn't that bad. I've waited for him up on the corners, waited for him to come, and took him down by the flagpole a few times. His wife.
He wouldn't do anything like that.
No. I remember one night over to Erie, I'm setting him up there. He took me out in a I had to get qualified. He took me out in a consolation race or something. My wife used to set with Big Red as one of his wives. Oh. He's been married 15 times so far. But anyway, don't get mad now. But I sat there waiting for him to come around. And my little Norwegian told Red, she said, Tom and I are close, real close. And he finally pissed him off. He told me. And I did. I caught him. I got him. Don't get carried away now, he said. The only way you got by Tom is when he'd get it broke loose, like you were talking about Dean, get the ass end hanging out, or then you shoot underneath him, shut the door so he couldn't come off the corner without hitting you. And that's the only way you got by him. And one night at Erie, I don't remember what happened. I was leading the race, he was leading the race back and forth. And finally, I shot it underneath him and I run about 2 laps. It was one of them nights when everybody's lead broke down or something. Well, anyway, I've got by him that probably the same that way. He come running over. We know we're no longer friends, and I ripped my good. Now I won't feel bad, and I wrap you right between the eyes. Now don't get carried. Anyway, we both laughed. Oh, God almighty.
The biggest thing I can remember about Tom was he was a little wild, but I never had any problem with Tom Dill myself. I used him to my advantage, really. If I was behind him, Tom could clear the way out to get up through there, and I'd try to follow him. So no, I always got along good with Tom. Matter of fact, one time I forget what I did. I bumped him, put him in a fence, and he wasn't too happy about it. I think it was at State Line there one time. I didn't do it intentionally, but he, I don't know, he never got even with me for it, so I guess it was okay.
We couldn't catch you.
Oh yeah, he could. He ran great.
Talk about Tom Dill. What was his reputation as a driver?
Oh, he said he carried a gun.
Be careful.
There's only one man scarier, was 39, Johnny Whitehead. He'd look over at you and Is
that right?
I don't think he had any teeth or something. He looked pretty scary, you know. He'd intimidate you, Johnny Whitehead.
Yeah, Tommy's a good friend. Can't remember too much about. We used to go to Motordrome and race, and Tom would bring his motorcycle, and then he'd try to go up the hill with me on it, you know. And we'd get almost to the top, and I just put my feet down. I always told the same thing: you can't kill me that way. I won't let you. But Tommy, we had Warren, Pennsylvania. He come up the back straightaway and flipped it. And I know I come up the back straightaway, and I was running behind him, but the car looked like it was going to catch on fire. I remember jumping out and getting him out on my shoulders and running to the infield, and that was it. That's we were a buddy from there that day on. Honest to God, we're closer than what you can believe.
I'm alongside. He raced the same year car, I think, and it was a Dodge as I did. And I can remember coming around and passing me. I think it was coming out of the 4th turn and looking over at me and smiling and just slamming me into the wall. Didn't hurt other than paint, you know, and smiled. And that's all he did. No bad feelings, no nothing. And I knew what he was up to, you know. So it didn't bother me.
Yeah. Kind of welcome to the club.
Yeah.
If you hit Tommy Dill, there's a pretty good chance he would get a hit back. And he could do it.
Was he that good?
Yes, he was very good. Yeah. Yes, he was. Well, Tommy was at the racetrack a few weeks later, and he had his bag with him. George says, Tommy's looking for a ride, and he was going to the late models. And he says, you're going for a ride. Because that's what Tommy wants. He wants to drive a car. And he says he'll get you. Then he'll be happy. It'll be all over with.
You just wanted to even the score.
Well, I didn't spin him out. Well, yeah, I did that right out there. Yeah, I see him put his suit on. I knew he had a ride, and I see what car he was in. He missed me the first time, but he didn't miss me the second time. George says, he's all right now. He did what he wanted to do. That's all over. He won't bother you anymore.
He's one guy that you wouldn't want to try to get by on the last lap, I'll tell you, because either you both wouldn't finish the race or you wouldn't anyways. But that was the way he was. But I'll tell you something about Tom Dill. I think he had more talent to drive a race car, I mean all-around talent,
He didn't do a terrible amount of winning at state line, but he could do things with a car that I'd never seen anybody else do.
Who else was the guys that were characters?
Oh, God. They were all characters that were in race cars.
Tom Dill. Talk to me about Tom Dill.
Oh, crazy. Crazy man. He was fun but you just didn't want to be racing with him.
Yeah.
But when he was out of his race car, he was a great guy. He'd laugh and joke and heck, he'd spin you out. And then he'd come into pits and joke with the guy he spun out, But Tom was a great guy. Heck of a driver.
Tom Dill, he was a good guy, but if he could gain a position by pushing you all the way, he sure do it in a hurry, I'll tell you. In fact, a 50-lapper at Erie, I was leading that race, and I guess probably what really hurt the most is the winner of that 50-lapper automatically qualified for the Stony 2. And I was leading that race. The white flag came out. I went through 1 and 2, come down the backstretch, went into 3. Well, I knew Tom was chasing me because every turn I see that orange fender, and I'm just driving my brains out trying to stay ahead of him, Took the white flag, go through 1 and 2, down the backstretch. Like I say, coming into 1, there's that orange fender. Coming into 3, there's that orange fender, and it's really coming because he put me around so quick it wasn't even funny. I thought, you got to be kidding me. In fact, my wife had both boys up at the fence because she was telling, hey, Dad's going to win the feature. Dad's not going to win the feature. I think I finished like 3rd because I think by the time I got myself gathered up, I think Ronnie Blackmer went by too. I think Ronnie finished 2nd and I finished 3rd, That's the only thing I think about. I still remember that night,
Tom was an aggressive driver. He's like
It's so political.
He's like Earnhardt, like Mr. Earnhardt used to be.
Yeah.
He'd give you a little bump and then go by, and then he is all right. But he's a good driver, but he wanted to win. He was out there to win.
Yeah.
Dill would scare you. I mean, I was in the points most of the time, and Dill wasn't a lot of time, and he didn't care if he won or not. If he can't win, he don't want to finish. He wanted to win. That's the only way.
Right.
And if you were in his way, look out.
But
he used to scare me. I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
I only weighed nothing.
Of course, Tom Dill, he must have had a riot there. Still remember rolling that guy's car over, putting it up on top of the guardrails for him.
Tell us about that.
What was it? The guy wanted him to try the car out because it was pulling to the right or something. And he pulled to the right. He put it right up on the guardrails for the guy.
He came to my garage one time when we were working in there, and he came down, and it was in the summertime, and both the bays were open. And all of a sudden I hear this roar, here comes a motorcycle. He spun it right around in the garage. Boy, we scattered.
In the garage?
In the garage. Oh, he was that way. I mean, we were friends and like that, but he was crazy.
The funniest part about Tom is he was the nicest guy you'd want to meet, but he was
Parky in a heartbeat.
And sit there and laugh about it.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd take you out and be just grinning all the way.
The dread going to Erie. Sunday nights was terrifying to me. I'm thinking about this all the way up to Erie. For me to do good, I got to get past Tom Dill. And Tom Dill, he could do things with the car, and it was, in the first place, he wasn't fixing it, so he wasn't as careful about, he wasn't worried about when he hit something.
In the good old days.
Hey.
Oh my. Did you recognize anybody?
I see them all. A lot of troublemakers. I didn't realize that some of them liked me so well.
Is that right, John? Did he ever bump into you?
Not that I can remember.
Not to never. This never happened. Never happened.
Running to me all the goddamn time.
Hey, you got a lot of press in there today, but it wasn't all good.
You think he cares?
He's laughing now.
He's laughing now.
He don't like me anymore.
You touch my life, protect me from my fears, from my fears. I think of a time on Saturday afternoon. I put myself there, even though you are gone. I will keep you with me as life moves on. Take me with you to heaven, when my time is done. Take me with you to heaven. Day does come. The goal in your life to love and protect me. Best friend you were, right to the end. Your patient lead will help my heart to mend. Remember one day of our journey. Time passed me by, this chapter is done. You brought a smile to each and every one. Take me with you to heaven, when my time is done. Take me with you to heaven. Stay with me until that day does come. So many lives will be changed without you. Your contagious smile that shine like the sun. You hold with you a part of everyone. Your passion for life is now our memory. Stays with us as we move along. Now throughout eternity, right on. Take me with you to heaven, when my time is done. Take me with you to heaven. Stay with me until that day does come. That day will come. Take me with you to heaven. Take me with you to heaven. Stay with stay with me till then. The story is, Tom, my father, had a real good friend named Dick Hoos. Dick Hoos, he was a motorcycle guy. He brought in all the Triumphs around town, and he drove a lot of bikes for Dick. And his daughter wrote a poem. Well, she started going to college, and she took this poem to college. And at this college, there was some guys there that went and they would write music and that was their pastime. One of the guys that were there was James Taylor. One of the guys there was Jim Croce. So they took this poem that they wrote about Tom, and they made a song out of it. And if you listen to Croce's Greatest Hits, it's on the Greatest Hits. So here it is. That good boy, that star cowboy, he had too much to do. He always got an extra pack of cigarettes, rolled up in his t-shirts. He got a tattoo on his arm that said, baby. He got another one that just said, hey. And every Sunday afternoon, dirt track in 57 Chevrolet. And that good boy, that star cowboy, he the best driver in the pan. They say that he learned on stock cars, running shine out of Alabama. Well, the demolition duty and the figure eight is easy money in the bank. Compared to running from a man in Oklahoma City with a 500-gallon tank. That big Roy, that stock car boy, he had too much to believe. You know he always got an extra pack of cigarettes rolled up in his t-shirts. He got a tattoo on his arm that said, baby. He got another one that just say, hey. And every Sunday afternoon there's a dirt track moving in a 57 Chevrolet. So cool, that Grace Harborcreek, he don't know what fear's about. He go 131 style like a camel with a toothpick in his mouth. He got a girl back home, make a Dixie dog, but he got honeys all the wrong way. And he ought to hear him screaming from the dirt track, tuning in the 57 Chevrolet.
Dies first. And what you put in the ground is not the plant that will grow, but only a bare seed you are planting. Then God gives it the new body he wants it to have. It is the same way with the resurrection of the dead. Our earthly bodies are planted in the ground, and when we die, but they will be raised to live forever. Our bodies are buried in brokenness, but they will be raised in glory. They are buried in weakness, but they will be raised in strength. For our dying bodies must be transformed into bodies that will never die. Our mortal bodies must be transformed into immortal bodies. Then, when our dying bodies have been transformed into bodies that will never die, this scripture will be fulfilled. Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? For sin is the sting that results in death, but thank God, He gives us victory over sin and death through our Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
We can cry with hope. We can say goodbye with hope. Because we know our goodbyes are not the end. And we can grieve with hope because we believe with hope. There's a place by God's grace that we'll see His face again. One last scripture. 1 Thessalonians 4:13 and 14. And Hebrews 6:18 and 19. We do not grieve like them who have no hope. The grave is not the last word. For we have obtained the promise and have strong consolation upon the hope that is an anchor for our soul, that everything God has promised us is true, that by God's mercy He has saved us through Jesus Christ, that being justified by His grace, we are made heirs according to the hope of eternal life.
There's a season for living, a season for dying. Tom had a season for winning. We're not only here for our own pleasure. We're here to serve God. And a lot of that is by the way we live, the way we do unto others. Tom was here for my mom was here for Tom. And they came here to comfort each other with their later years. And God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that through Him, whoever believeth in Him, may have an everlasting life and not perish.
Yes.
Tom had Jesus Christ as His Savior.
Yes.
By grace, through faith by grace, we are saved.
Yes.
None of us are worthy. We all have faults. And so Jesus was our sacrificial lamb. And so He's going to be up here with a white robe. And
Yes.
our Lord will say, well done, faithful servant.
Yes.
That's right.
Amen. Yes.
I want to share one more thing. I remember one time we're up at Coosa's hunting camp. Tom had this Dodge van. He had a big concrete block in the back for traction. And his brother Bob was with him. That's the only time I met Bob. And I think Tom, Chuck might have been in the back with us because we were just in the back of the van. We're going down the hill. There's another road, like a 45-degree, going up the other way, Allegheny Mountains. He hits the emergency brake, slides that thing around, the head of his tire just spinning. We're flying from one side of the van to the other side of the van. There's a lot of different things. One of the things but the thing I remember most of all is he always had a smile on his face. Steve, would you like to come up next? Steve Dill, Tom's son.
Tom Dill, he was more than just a prolific stock car racer. He was at heart a good man, and he was my dad. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that he was a perfect man or a perfect father. I, over the course of my lifetime, come to learn that no man is. I'm sure my wife Linda and my kids Steve and Lindsay, they would attest to that. I am, however, very proud of them and the fine adults that they've become. They are my legacy and my dad's as well. And I'm sure that had my brother Mike been able to make the trip today, he'd say the same for his 6 kids. So there's quite a legacy there. Mike and I had a somewhat distant relationship with Dad in the early years. He and my mom could not make things work, and the demands of his time removed him farther. But in more recent years, we came to reach a closer bond, and one I'm thankful for. He and my daughter became close also. She once showed up on his Florida doorstep on the bicycle she'd ridden from Washington, D.C., just to stop and say hi. Later, when he unfortunately had multiple stays down at the VA hospital in Pittsburgh, she stepped up and acted as my emissary down there, and gladly filled that role. And I think they became really close, and she really lifted his spirits during some of those trips. One of the early memories I have of my dad would include, as a very young kid, getting all packed and ready to go for a weekend stay with him. And sitting there waiting by the window, looking out, because he was always late. That's where I get it from. Eventually, he'd roll up on his motorcycle. He'd somehow strap our bags onto the bike, and then he'd kick into full racing mode, with me on the gas tank and my brother on the back, taking turns just about laying the bike down. I'm not sure you could get away with that these days. Somehow he got away with everything. And sometimes we'd arrive at Erie Speedway that way, and he'd take the bike right on up into the stands to make his grand entrance. Cheering him on Sunday nights kind of became a ritual. I remember a wild ride around the track one night with my brother and his friend and I sitting in the rear window hanging on to the roll bar. We should have known that just because we were back there didn't mean he was going to take it easy on that lap. Somehow we hung on. There were plenty of interesting stories from those days. The days I spent helping him out at his garage. We'll save those stories for another time. A story he loved to tell me was about a time when I was around 4 or 5 years old. And we were driving, he was driving, somebody cut him off, and he just blurted out, "You son of a bitch." There was silence for a moment, and I turned and said, "He really was a son of a bitch, wasn't he, Dad?" Later on in life, following my wedding, we had planned to take a delayed honeymoon, a ski trip. But he kind of insisted that we come back to Florida with him. So we really couldn't say no. We went back to Florida, and he went out of his way to really make sure we had a good time while we were there. And I remember the one day we did ask him to come swimming with us at the ocean, and he said, "I refuse to swim with anything that considers me lunch." Anyone who knows him knows he had a pretty dry wit that way. Through it all, though, he helped me to learn that influencing your kids is about setting examples through your successes and through your mistakes. He also had many very good friends, some that I was lucky enough to meet. I can't name them all. I met one from New Jersey that he felt was kind of special. One from the Garland area, Jim Scott, who's here today. I was honored to stand up for him at his wedding, the most recent one. I think he got it right this time. Joanne's truly a gem. There aren't too many other people who would sign the Christmas card number 5. They were they were good friends with my mom and my late stepfather too, and kind of really brought things full circle. I'm grateful for the fact that I saw him shortly before his passing, and I'm grateful for all the memories and the stories of his life. I love you, Dad. Wave that checkered flag high.
Me and Tom go back a long way. First time I met Tom Dill was at a 100-lap jalopy race at State Line, and they started almost 100 cars. And we all had old flathead V8s and six-cylinder Chevrolets, and Tom shows up with a big V8 in his car. And needless to say, he spanked us really bad. And, you know, I think I finished 5th, and I'm like 3 laps down. So that tells you how fast he was with that car. And I know he won the race because I got the trophy at home. A year or so ago, we were talking about that, and he said, you know, I got that trophy in the back room. And he said, why don't you take that down there and put it on in your little museum? So he went and got it, brought it out, and gave it to me. Well, I'm going to take that trophy to State Line and we're going to do some sort of little tribute to Tom up there. I don't know just what we're going to do, but that trophy is going to be one of the items we have in there. Like in the early 60s, Tom showed up at the racetrack, and you know, you'd heard about Tom Dill, and he'd won some races at Kuhl Road and this and that. What we didn't realize at State Line at the time was he was already a champion. He had already won hundreds of motorcycle races. He knew how to win. I was just an apprentice. I was just kind of there, but he had already been out there in the limelight, and he had already learned how to win. Well, when him and Moby showed up with that 62, I think 62 Chevrolet with a 409 in it, it was so much faster than anything that was there. And it's not like Tom couldn't drive that thing. And he won with that, or he blew it up. And it was really quick. And forbid anybody get in his way, because he was going to go to the front. And you know, I've said about Tom, and I told that to Tom more than once, I said, when you put a helmet on, you turn your brain off. He was wide open from the time he dropped the green flag till the checkered flag came out. And that's the way Tom always drove. And I think the championship that he had won with these motorcycles fed that to him. And then they showed there a little bit from the stadium up here. He won a lot of races with his jalopy. So he had already learned how to win. And if you're a racer, before you can win, you've got to learn how to win. Then in the I think the middle 60s, somebody told me that Tom had a new car. So I drove to Erie to his garage, and then he's taking the interior out of a brand new car they brought over from Metacraft. Brand new car. Well, we all had new cars, but they were all wrapped. And there was a brand new car right off the showroom with a 440 in it, and a 4-speed, and it was way better than anything we had at the time. And Tom won with that car. There was a couple of pictures of it in the thing there, and he won a lot with it. Then Tom and Julian, I don't know how many people know that Tom Dill actually led the Daytona 500 in '61 down to Daytona. Him and Julian put a car together in Findlay Lake, and they got the car all done, and they decided maybe they ought to test it. So they fired it up. Now this is the race car. Drove it to Corey. Wide open. By then the cops realized what was going on, and they drove her back to Findlay Lake wide open. Well, the cops was waiting for them. So they went up into New York State somewhere and hid. Go dark. And then drove the car back home, back to the garage. Now the cops knew who it was, but nothing was ever done about it. And we always called Tom Terrible Tom. You know, he was, again, he would put that helmet on. Man, he was a terror on the racetrack. But what he had the whole town of Erie behind him. Him and Fanale were the hero race car drivers out of Erie. There's been a lot of race car drivers out of Erie, but you mentioned Tom Dill or Fanale. They were the class of the racing field out of Erie. Always were. Everybody knows Tom Dill. I don't care what racetrack you go to, you mention Tom Dill, they know who you're talking about. He had that love-hate relationship that Dale Earnhardt Sr. had. Either you respected his ability, you didn't have to like the guy to respect his ability, but that love-hate relationship that a lot of people have with Dale Earnhardt, I think they have with Tom Dill. I couldn't stand the guy when I first started racing. Man, he took a bite of you every time he went by, you know. So, but then in the 60s, he started stopping in down at the garage in the mornings. And on Monday morning, he was working for a lift truck company. And he would stop in and we'd have coffee and we'd discuss what was going on. And he'd tell me, you know, the only reason I hit you was because you weren't going fast enough. So, how can you argue with that? Then once we were done racing, in the late 60s when I started driving for Julia, and I had cars that were capable of keeping up with Tom's cars, and then we got on a way better relationship because we raced each other really, really clean. It's not like I never touched him or he never touched me, but we respected each other on a racetrack. And then that led to Monday morning coffee down at my place, and he'd bring the donuts and we'd have coffee and discuss the weekend racing. And that's when the friendship kindled. Until then, Tom was just another racer to me. And from that point on, Tom was my friend. And then he moved to Florida, and then every winter I always made we always went to the Daytona 500, and then we always spent a week over to Tom's over in Tampa. And got to know him, got to know how he ran his business over there. I like flea markets, he liked flea markets. I like old cars, he liked old cars. I like racing, he liked racing, so we really got along well. Then Coos and Pasquale and Tom started coming to my place hunting deer, and most people hunt deer, you walk through the woods. Tom Dill did it on a motorcycle. I had heard that. I went hunting with him one time. There's 7 deer going down across the field. He jumped in the back of the pickup, fired that bike up, jumped it out of the back of the truck, took half that deer with a motorcycle. I hope there's no day work. So, and that really cemented the relationship. And I had built a hunting stand on the hill, and every first week we always spent up there in that hunting shanty. We didn't hunt much, we talked a lot. I really got to know Tom in that hunting shanty. And, you know, most people don't realize that he got shot trying to repossess a car one time. He was walking up the driveway to confront the owner, and he seen the guy sliding shells in his shotgun. So he ran, and he dove over the car, and then he spent the night in the hospital picking pellets out of his behind, you know. And after that, he had a key for all the cars. But then, a few years back, he married Joanne, and now there's a whole new family. I just love them people. They just, and Tommy bring Tom to the racetrack all the time, and he was voted most popular fan in Erie a few years back, which meant a lot to Tom. And the relationship we had with Tom at the racetrack was, I'm really going to miss that. I'm really going to miss that.
Well, I'll tell you, the last few years have been pretty special to me because Tom and I have turned into dirt track junkies, going wherever we could to watch a race every weekend. And at the end, it got so he could go in the state line, was pushing, but he just loved the Scots so much. And I'll tell you, when he goes up in the stands, and you people would come up and say, "Hey, aren't you Tom Dill?" Or, "Can I have an autograph?" That was a shot of juice for him. I'm going to tell you, when he was at the track, he was in his element, more so than anywhere else, more so than anywhere else. That's when he was in his element. I got just a couple stories. My father was Tom's greatest fan in the world. I mean, he just loved Tom enough that he named me Tom. So I mean, they were tight, they went hunting, and he just loved them. So he would tell stories about how Tom, and when we were young, he would tell stories about the motorcycles. And he was a terrific motorcycle rider, just gifted. And remember, they didn't have suspension like they have now, and they didn't have, they were rough riding. So he's telling me about, they would go on these enduros, and he said there was this huge hill, and there was people lined up and down the hill, watching, and there was people letting their motorcycles down with a rope. I mean, it was incredibly steep. You know, it was Tom's turn to come down. He went down, he looked right down, jumped right down the hill, and all the crowd went, "Whoa," like that. So he heard it all. He turned around, came back up, waved, and went back down again. I mean, that was typical Tom Dill, right? That's what he was. He was all about that. I think it's time to be done. I forgot the second one. That's fine.